Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's go and check out 10 of Vince McMahon's big sweaty muscle men that flopped in WWE. Which tries, that's literally telling you that it is not only about being jacked and being handsome. Like in this business, you have to be all-rounded, and at the end of the day, you could have everything on paper and still not succeed. It's such an industry, especially the entertainment industry. It is very difficult, and it's also there is a percentage of luck into it. Let's check out WrestleMania video, but before we do so, make sure to check out my Patreon for more WWE reactions. I do SmackDown, NXT, as well as Raw every single week. I do all the events there and documentaries. I'm watching LFG right now. I want to start with the Stephanie's documentary as well. A lot of fun. We have a community, we have a group chat, we stay connected in. So if you're into WWE and you want to explore more and you are interested in my content, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/supportbunny. I will leave a link in the description down below. Let's go and react.
10 of Vince McMahon's big sweaty men that flopped in WWE. Number 10, Lars Sullivan. Unlike most of the names discussed in this video, Lars Sullivan was a name that was favored by both Triple H and Vince McMahon. During Sullivan's run in NXT, the game truly believed that he was something special, but it was never made clear what made Triple H think this, as outside of an impressive look, Sullivan was the definition of generic. They will put Sullivan in the NXT title picture, and unfortunately, Sullivan flopped massively in the role, as even the top names of NXT just couldn't carry him to a passable matchup. But it was Vince McMahon who had grand plans for Sullivan on the main roster. Sullivan was going to be boosted straight up to the top. WWE even had plans of Sullivan facing John Cena at WrestleMania 35. As in early 2019, the big sweaty man was supposed to make his debut and target Cena on WWE television, which would ignite a feud leading to WrestleMania. However, Lars Sullivan ended up leaving due to an anxiety attack, thus forcing WWE to cancel all the plans.
Oh my god, I imagine people who get anxiety are more like me, because I had anxiety attacks when I moved to Germany, not knowing the language and so many other reasons as well. But now I don't have them anymore. But thinking that like a jacked person like that, a big guy like that, getting anxiety attacks, like that is crazy, but it happens.
But the anxiety attack was the least of his issues, as Sullivan had been out for most of the year due to injuries suffered. It was also revealed that Lars Sullivan had a past in the adult film industry. There were also allegations of harassment. All of these factors led to Lars Sullivan being released in 2021. Number 9, Heiden Reich. One of the formulas that WWE used throughout The Undertaker's 30-year career was debuting a new larger-than-life wrestler against the dead man.
Oh my god.
Sometimes this worked, as names such as Kane and even the Great Khali were successful, yet some of the names that The Undertaker was forced to work with were just awful pro wrestlers. Heiden Reich would debut in WWE in 2004, and he was presented as a total psychopath. He was a lover of poetry, and whilst WWE attempted to flesh out the character somewhat, the fans just didn't care. The main issue was that his character was all over the place, and the aura that he had completely disintegrated the moment his matches started, as his in-ring work was abysmal. WWE would try a number of things to get him over, and they would even try turning him babyface and aligning him with Road Warrior Animal, but this did little to influence a positive reception. Jim Ross commented on Heiden Reich on his podcast, and as always, JR summed up the issues perfectly.
But we thought, well, this son of a bitch is big and impressive and has a distinctive look. If we could get him fundamentally sound and teach him how to do basic rudimentary things in the ring that a big man would do, then we would be ahead of the curve. It's just the fact that some guys have the aptitude for the business and some guys just don't. John had a problem assimilating the nuances of being a pro wrestling performer. But as far as a bad guy or anything, no. Some guys just don't have, if you didn't grow up a fan, you don't, aware of the product as much, or you could disconnect with it at some point.
Like you can look the part, but you cannot do it.
In your formative years, sometimes it's hard to regain that. And I think that's the case with John.
WWE put a lot of resources into getting the character over, but sometimes that's not enough to get a wrestler over with the audience. And number 9 of Vince McMahon's big sweaty men just failed. Number 8, Ezekiel Jackson. The WWE were insistent on making Ezekiel Jackson a big-time player in 2010. Jackson had a great look, yet the aura and legitimacy disintegrated the moment he wrestled. Jackson would be chosen as the last ever ECW champion, and the idea here was to give him significant credibility before a move to Raw or SmackDown. Jackson would eventually end up joining a stable known as the Core, and this was done so Jackson could break away as a babyface, similarly to Batista in Evolution 5 years prior. Unfortunately, Jackson was no Batista, and even though Jackson would win the Intercontinental title on pay-per-view, it wasn't enough to make fans care. WWE had given Jackson chance after chance to get over, but he needed a lot of work in the ring, and he needed a fleshed out character that fans could resonate with. Number 7. Nathan Jones. Upon debuting on the WWE main roster, Nathan Jones was immediately thrown into a storyline with The Undertaker. This was a seal of approval from WWE, and to his credit, the fans were reacting somewhat positively to him. It certainly could be argued that this was no doubt because of the association with the dead man, as opposed to anything unique that Jones was offering. The problem was that Jones just wasn't that great in the ring. Whilst he had the size, he lacked anything else. Going to be set up for a major WrestleMania match, as he was going to team with the dead man to take on Big Show and A-Train at WrestleMania 19. However, due to Jones not being ready for such a high-profile matchup, he was pulled, and WWE opted to have him make a cameo appearance instead. They would try to present him as a heel in late 2003, but this was even worse, as he came across as goofy and cartoonish. Eventually, Jones had enough of the WWE lifestyle, and during a tour of Australia, he decided to stay home and leave WWE behind forever. Number 6. Brackus. During the Attitude Era, the idea of big meaty men being main eventers was slowly fizzling out. But with that being said, Vince McMahon still had a major preference, and one of the names he hoped would get over was Brackus. Brackus had one of the most impressive physiques ever seen on WWE television, as he was a legitimate bodybuilder. Sadly, this was the Attitude Era, and this wasn't going to be enough. He was met with utter silence from the audience, and his in-ring work was not at the level WWE needed at the time. It was even claimed that Brackus was reckless in the ring, and names such as Dutch Mantel have often claimed that nobody wanted to work with him in any capacity. Number 5. Matt Morgan. Now in 2003, WWE debuted Matt Morgan, who stood at 7 feet tall. Morgan was inserted into a storyline with Brock Lesnar for the annual Survivor Series event, but this did little to get him over with the audience. Despite the impressive look, he lacked confidence, and this was detrimental to his early pro wrestling success. Vince quickly realized that Morgan wasn't cut out for the main roster, so another run in the developmental territory OVW would follow before Morgan would eventually reappear on the main roster in 2005. Morgan had failed to develop any of his skills during his time in developmental, and it didn't come as a surprise that Morgan was released from WWE. In a move that received initial criticism, TNA would then sign Morgan, and to his credit, he managed to work on his craft, and by the time 2011 rolled around, he was one of the top babyfaces in the entire company. Number 4. Mason Ryan.
So it was the wrong
WWE's grand idea for Mason Ryan was to pair him with CM Punk on the main roster. Due to Punk's popularity and promo skills, they hoped that this would make fans actually care about Ryan, but sadly it didn't. Ryan looked like a clone of Batista, and some fans theorized that WWE were just trying to replicate the Batista character, and all signs pointed towards that being the case. But the primary issue was Ryan's in-ring work, as he often looked lost in the ring, and even though he was working with main eventers, they struggled to make the matches remotely entertaining. Eventually, WWE decided to send Ryan back to developmental, and whilst this run saw some improvement, it just wasn't enough. WWE cut ties with the Welsh-born star in 2014, and even though his run didn't live up to expectations, he was said to be popular backstage and seemed like a good human being. Number 3. Luther Reigns. Luther Reigns debuted during the Ruthless Aggression era, and he was mostly known for his work alongside the legendary Kurt Angle. But Reigns was one of the dullest wrestlers on the roster at the time, and all WWE could tell the audience about this individual was that he was large and muscly. WWE tried to make him wrestle names such as Eddie Guerrero and John Cena, and these were a total snooze fest, as Reigns was unbelievably generic and lifeless as an in-ring performer. There was significant discourse on message boards at the time focused on WWE not understanding their audience. They were debuting names such as Reigns and Heiden Reich, knowing full well that they weren't ready to have great matches, yet they just hoped that their physical presence would be enough. It was incredibly frustrating as a viewer of the Ruthless Aggression product. Number 2. Mabel. Mabel weighed in at almost 500 pounds, and Vince McMahon saw dollar signs when it came to the former Men on the Mission member. McMahon's bold idea was to save the 95 product by making Mabel the top heel in the entire company. Whilst Mabel wasn't a total disaster in the ring, he wasn't at the level of other main eventers such as Diesel, Shawn Michaels, The Undertaker, and Bret Hart. Mabel would even be booked to win the 95 King of the Ring, and this win would followed up with Mabel's biggest match of his entire career. He would take on Diesel at the SummerSlam pay-per-view, and this match just so happened to be for the WWE title. The match was horrendous, and it exposed everything wrong about the 95 product. Mabel even hurt Diesel in the match, and this almost led to McMahon firing him with immediate effect. The SummerSlam match would mark the end of Mabel's push in WWE, and whilst he was given many pushes over the years with various different characters, he would never even sniff the main event scene ever again. And number 1, Giant Gonzalez. Without a doubt, the most infamous name to ever work with The Undertaker was Giant Gonzalez. Despite having a ton of size, Gonzalez was one of the worst performers in pro wrestling history, and he's responsible for some of the most hated matches of The Undertaker's career. The matches between the two in 1993 were truly horrific, and WWE were hoping...
Why would you do that, man? The guy can't even move. What is that? He's just like throwing people around without even caring how they're landing. That is terrible.
But that Gonzalez's novelty look would make fans care and invest in him as a performer. Speaking to Sam Roberts, The Undertaker spoke honestly about Gonzalez in the ring. That whole thing took years off my career. I would be in much better shape now if I could have skipped that one program. As physically demanding as it was twice as much the mental strain because you have Bret, Yokozuna going out and having these great matches. Obviously, you want to be mentioned in the same breath as those guys, and it was just not possible. Vince McMahon often liked to treat The Undertaker
like being a really successful wrestler. It's not just about you and your performance. It's about whoever you are working with elevating your performance. If you don't have that chemistry between two, like for example, I watched Raw 2 days ago, and there was the match between Finn Balor versus AJ Styles. I don't know if you have seen that yet, and these two are individuals who are very experienced, very talented. They are kind of veterans. So I would say like they had everything going for them, and they completely destroyed it. They delivered. Not only that they delivered, now we have another match, a tag team match with them and Penta and I don't know who, JD McDonough. So I can't wait for that match because I know they're gonna deliver, and I know it's gonna be really good match. And that's the thing, like if you have two individuals who are really good and they elevate each other, they make each other look so much better.
As a test subject for these types of wrestlers, and this was largely unfair. The Undertaker needed compelling wrestlers to work with who could actually wrestle. The fact that Taker wasn't even booked to defeat this man clean at WrestleMania is shocking, and it just goes to show how invested WWE and McMahon were in one of the most disastrous characters to ever step foot in a WWE ring. But there you have it, folks. 10 of Vince McMahon's big sweaty men that flopped in WWE.
He looks like a Titan.
Leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.
All right, guys.